For USCFootball.com Instant Analysis, I'm Riley Sager and Connor Morrissette. Day 13 of spring practice. Great environment overall. Recruits, their families, little kids waiting for the players to come out of the tunnel. High fives. Former Trojan and Utah Jazz guard Isaiah Collier. He showed up to practice to watch. Instant observations.
Another great day out here in sunny Southern California. As always, we try to monitor some of the recruits who are on campus. I've lost track of how many times Tamahini Tapui, the four-star defensive lineman from Mater Dei, has been here. He was here once again. He got a big dap up from one of the security guards. That was really funny to see. It's like he's a student here, Riley, already. So he, of course, flipped from Oregon and is now at USC. He shut his recruitment down. Never say never, but it really seems like he's locked in with USC. He's here almost every day. From Sarah, there was a contingent of guys here. Kari Wilder, the edge rusher, Duve Williams, the 2027 cornerback. And at the end of practice, we actually saw Trevon Reed, the cornerbacks coach, walk with Williams one-on-one. It really looks like they're prioritizing him right now. Another year away, of course, but a very talented kid. I think he's a top 100 kid across all of the recruiting rankings. And then getting into practice, a lot of good action today. They were in shells, but as we're leaving, Riley, the pop from DJ Harvey nailing Jacobe Lane on a screen pass that was not blocked up very well, that is a lasting impression from today. We all know how good Jacobe Lane is. He's going to have a fantastic season. The play was not well blocked, as I said, but on that occasion, right as we're leaving, we're not usually allowed to see that, DJ Harvey breaks right through a block and just nailed Jacobe Lane. They're not in full pads, as I said, but they were in shells, so it was still a very hard hit, and I'm still hearing that contact, that the pads banging into each other, the helmet hitting a shoulder pad. That was really loud and was something that I'll remember for a while here.
Yeah, we were walking out, we're like, what was that?
Yeah.
What was that? Down Lane goes. We got to talk to him after practice.
Yes.
What did he say?
He just is even-keeled. I know he can kind of be up and down sometimes as that hothead receiver, as we've seen, but he seemed very even-keeled today. And he talked about, I asked him, what does it mean to you to score 12 touchdowns in a season? And he just said, in some of those games we didn't win, so I just need to be better. Really took the high road there. It's just so crazy to me, Riley, how, not crazy, but it's just so apparent how beloved he is. When kids were here last week, everyone knows Jacobe Lane's name. The 12 touchdowns last season, I think he only had like 500-something receiving yards, but 12 touchdowns, and his dancing and just his one-handed catches, like, he is very marketable in this city of stars, and he is beloved, and I'm so happy that he's back at USC for his junior season. He looks bigger to me. I think he's going to have a huge year, but in terms of what he talked about, nothing really groundbreaking. He talked about his Starbucks order. I forget exactly what it was, but it was a Trenta, something that had not as much coffee as I would like, but just a fan favorite for a reason, and I'm so excited to see what he can do this fall.
Yeah, I don't know. There was peach juice. It was a long order, but like you said, just the personality, not just what he can do on the field, but the kids were so excited to see him. I know the parents were like, when Jacobe comes by, like, reach out, give him a high five. So it was great to see that he can cultivate not just success on the field, but just the environment on and off.
Absolutely. He's a great kid, and it was a shame that he got hit so hard, but that's football. As for some other observations, so when the quarterbacks were warming up, Luke Heward was really watching Hassan Longstreet closely. Jacobe Lane was in Hassan Longstreet's group warming up. Jaden Maiava is going to be the starting quarterback. Lincoln Riley pretty much said that 100% at the end of practice. I asked him if Hassan Longstreet, who we've heard has been doing really well, is pushing for that job. He said he's progressing well, but Jaden is clearly the top guy right now. So it's interesting, like, we're hearing stuff about Longstreet. He's performing well. The quarterback coach is looking at him. He's in a group with Jacobe Lane, but Riley's pretty much said, hey, hold those thoughts right now. There is an established guy. He still looks like the starting quarterback. So that was the takeaway I had. DJ Jordan, the receiver, is out of his yellow jersey and is fully healthy. So that's reassuring because he has missed a lot of time, and USC just doesn't have that many receivers right now. Outside of the top quarterbacks and receivers, it was kind of sloppy, the warm-ups. I don't know if you noticed this, Riley, but a lot of balls on the ground, a lot of overthrows. Not the top guys. I thought Hassan Longstreet, Jaden Maiava, Jacobe Lane, Mekhi Levin, they all look good. But some of the walk-ons, some of the less experienced guys, they didn't have their best day warming up. At the beginning of the defensive stuff that we saw, Danton Lynn worked with the linebackers, then he moved over to the defensive line. And then Jakeem Stewart today was with the edge rushers instead of the interior defensive linemen. I think he's going to play a lot on the edge this season, and I'm really excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, Coach Riley, talking about Maiava, just he is the starter,
Yeah.
just kind of shutting down anything else about Hassan coming in. But I think just having Jaden be that kind of presence on the field, yes, he's still working for his position. You come in every day fighting for it. Nothing's guaranteed. So he has stuff to work on himself. But Coach Riley's just saying he's kind of leading the pack, He's working on his decision making. I think you asked him about that afterward.
Yeah, because that's something last season. His highs are incredibly high, but then against Notre Dame, the 2 pick sixes, he just had a lot of turnover-worthy plays. And if he could eliminate those, then he would be a hell of a lot better. His biggest problem, Riley, is that he's his own harshest critic. He is so hard on himself. He says he talks about that with Luke Heward. It's how he was raised. And, I think that's something that a lot of people can sympathize with when you maybe do something at a 9 out of 10 level, and instead of focusing on the 9, you're fixated on that 1 out of 10 that you didn't do really well. And that could be the fatal flaw of Jaden Maiava, something that he's really trying to work on and trying to get better at. And I wish him the best, because like I said, that's something I think any person, regardless of if they're a football fan in any field, you can kind of sympathize with that. So I hope he can overcome that. I know he's working on that, but in terms of decision making, say he does make a mistake, because no one's perfect. Ideally you don't want to throw a pick, but say you miss a receiver or you get the wrong read or something. It's so important just to don't let that drag you down, and I think that's something he's working on. And of course you can watch film and get more comfortable with the offense and develop in a whole bunch of ways, but to me the mental side with him is a huge piece, because he was crushed after that Notre Dame defeat. He takes everything so hard, like a lot of guys do, but just especially at that position with the limelight, in his situation, taking over for a guy last season in Miller Moss. I hope that this offseason he's not only taking strides as an X's and O's guy, but as just, taking stock in his mental health and trying to take steps in that direction, because I think if he can do that, he'll be really, really better off for it.
Yeah, like you said, at least he's aware of it. Yeah. He knows it's his flaw. That's my biggest concern with him, is just having that confidence, because this is a high level. This is a tough level.
Yep.
Obviously, it's USC football D1. So you're going to make those mistakes. You're going to be in those high-pressure situations. So I think it's really important just to work all the kinks out during spring. Like we said, the decision-making, knowing what passes he can make, what he's capable of during a game, so that if something does go wrong, and something will, at least he'll know how to bounce back and not get dragged down in it.
And we saw that in the Las Vegas Bowl. He had about as bad of a few series as you can have, throwing multiple interceptions, just looking lost at one point. That weird fumble that he had when the ball went totally backwards. And then what happens? He leads USC to a win. So he's shown that he can battle back. The thing for him is now, instead of having the highs and the lows, trying to be more consistent. I think the phrase is it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great, and maybe I'm botching that, but you don't want to have those highs and lows. I think he's just working on consistency, and that's something that I really hope he can figure out, because if you watch his interviews and you see how much he cares, it's an easy guy to root for.
Yeah, well, the team has faith in him. Coach Riley has faith in him. Another player Coach Riley seems to always want to talk about when asked about who's standing out, Walker Lyons, tight end. Coach Riley had a good point. Senior year of high school, he broke his leg, went on a mission trip for 2 years. So this past winter was really his first off season where he could plant his feet, get used to things, get in routine, kind of focus on development. Any thoughts there?
Lincoln Riley hates the question, but we always try to ask, because we can't see a whole lot, who's standing out, who's improved their stock. And when I asked that today, took him a while to come up with a name. He doesn't like to play favorites, and it's so rare. You won't ever hear an established guy. It's always going to be a newer or younger player. And today it was Walker Lyons who Riley brought up. And I just think the fact that the tight end room right now is so banged up, and he's getting so many reps. Lake McCree shut down. Nella Tapu has been unavailable during some practices. Joey Olson has been unavailable for some practices. For the vast majority of these, it's been Lyons and it's been Walter Matthews. And Lyons, just as the guy who's more experienced as a tight end, Walter Matthews played a bunch of different positions in high school. You can see that development is taking shape and he's improving. It also seems like USC is potentially looking at a tight end in the spring transfer portal window, so I kind of take what Riley's saying with a grain of salt a little bit. I do think he's developing. I do think things are going in the right direction, but I'm not totally sure if he's ready to be like the tight end one and, watch out, this guy's going to have this huge season. I think he could have a solid season, but I still think he has a little bit of work ahead of him.
Yeah, still a lot of room for improvement. Another young guy, Hayden Treater, offensive lineman, got to talk to him after practice. And when you're coming back from an injury, yes, there's a physical aspect of it, but just the mental toughness of it and dealing with it and trying to figure out what's your timeline, what's going to happen. He said he went through full body recomposition, lost a bunch of weight, gaining muscle, so that helped him from the agility and speed standpoint. But just trying to figure out how can he come back to the spring as best he can, mentally, not getting shaken up by certain things, just trying to be physically safe but also mentally confident in himself.
It's hard, too, when you miss so much time. He was pretty much banged up all of last season, so he's coming back now. He's feeling better. It looks like he's going to plug in at a guard spot. I wouldn't expect to see much of him this season, maybe a scout team guy who now he's finally healthy, can get those reps. And what did Chad Bowden say yesterday when he was interviewed by Josh Pate? A recruiting class, it's great to have guys who can play early. It's great to have the number one ranked class, but they want to get the right players in here. And I know Hayden Treater wasn't a Chad Bowden recruit, obviously, because he's so new, but after hearing him talk today, he seems like a guy who understands, hey, I might not really play until my third season. That's okay. That's because of my injury history. I wasn't the highest ranked recruit. Like, if that's what it takes to play at USC, then that's what it's going to take. I felt like he had a really good attitude, which was encouraging. And I do think that's important because you can only play 11 on offense, 11 on defense, and especially on that offensive line, you're not going to sub out a whole lot. So if a guy is not ready early, that's not the end of the world. You need people to understand that. Recruiting classes, especially at those positions, to understand that. It sounds like Treater does. So he seems to have a good head on his shoulders. This was the first time I got to speak with him. And, it sounds like he's plugging in at guard right now. Again, I don't expect to see him too much this season, but maybe he's one for the future. We'll see.
Yeah, I have a couple comments about receiver, Prince Strawn. Anyone else you want to talk about?
Who else did we get today? Oh, Tobias Raymond on the grill. That was pretty funny because Elijah Page a couple practices ago talked about how Tobias Raymond was a grill master, and he mentioned Tobias today, like, don't really have that much experience, but when we get together, the offensive lineman, I do most of the grilling. He is another guy who has a great head on his shoulders, competing for that right tackle spot, being pushed by Justin Tawanu. I asked him if it's hard to block out the outside noise with the portal being open. USC's been looking at a couple tackles. They were going to have one guy come in for a visit who committed to Iowa, so that didn't end up coming to be. But I can't imagine being in that situation where you're working so hard, you're competing for a job, and then maybe someone from the outside can come in. But Raymond said, no, I don't have that issue at all. I just keep the main thing. And he is another offensive lineman who has a good head on his shoulders. So between the grilling talk and just him staying focused, that was probably the biggest takeaway from him today.
As for Prince, my takeaway was just his full journey to coming to USC, transfer from Boise State, but he grew up in Freeport, Bahamas.
Yeah.
And football it's not a thing like it is here. It's kind of like track is to Bahamas, how football is to the U.S. But he talked about how his dad would teach him how to run routes and, using his siblings as decoys in defensive positions, just kind of getting in the routine, the practice of running those routes and just being able to see the field. So his dad had a big impact on that in his development. But also, he relocated to the U.S. after a hurricane in 2019 in the Bahamas, and so he's moving around with different host families and just not really feeling settled, now transferring to USC. So I hope to see a lot of growth from him this season, just finding his place here.
A guy with a ton of potential who picked up football relatively late, as you said, but his dad played in the NFL, so his brother, I think, is in the NFL too, so he knows what it takes to reach that high level. And, the host family stuff, I think, 3 different ones? Yeah. So that had to be really challenging. He's fought through a lot of adversity from the Bahamas to Florida to Boise State, now to USC. And when we talk about that third receiver after Maiava Lemon, after Jacobe Lane, who's that going to be? Prince Strawn's name comes up a lot, so I think he's due for a big year.
Yeah, I'm going to ask about the portal real quick,
okay.
Or we can wrap up with that.
No. Happy to ask about the portal.
Closes on Friday.
Yep.
Few developments at linebacker and safety. Any insight there?
So USC picked up a linebacker earlier today, Tamir Robinson from Penn State. I imagine that's going to be the last linebacker they add. I don't want to say that with 100% certainty, but I do think that they really like Jaden Walker, so I imagine that they'll only add one. They're poking around the receiver market. They're poking around the offensive line market. They're looking at a defensive back too. What I like is that they're not going to bring in, they're not desperate right now. If they have to, in their mind, that's probably the wrong thing to say, but if they need to go with what they have right now, that's not necessarily the end of the world. If they can't find someone to upgrade at right tackle, or they can't find someone to upgrade at cornerback, that's not necessarily an awful thing, because they have some capable guys there. Where in the past with Lincoln Riley, the roster was just so depleted that they needed to add a Greedy Vance last season. Gavin Meyer especially, they needed to add him. So they are still looking, but all around, like everything we've heard, it's been, we're going to prioritize the 2026 high school class. If we can add from the portal that will help us, we'll do that, but we're going to be very, very selective. And Tamir Robinson, he's a great story. He battled injuries and is now fully healthy for the first time in a while to start a season potentially. Of course, he needs to carry that on to fall camp, but with no football activity for him until fall camp, I will assume he'll be fully healthy. He's battled a lot of injuries, but he seems really good. I talked to one source who was here when he was here Saturday, and he said he's built like a truck. They are really excited about him. I think he'll play the weak side linebacker spot, so I'm glad he's healthy, and he came in to play a big role, and I think that's what's going to happen.
All right, well, thanks for all that, Connor. Yep. We've covered a lot here. Last minute wrap up, anything?
I think that's all I got, Riley. Great job by you.
Thank you. All right, this was Instant Analysis. One more practice left for media on Thursday. We'll see you then.